Hi everybody, and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. Let's go ahead and get right into it. DIY number 20. So for this project, I'm going to be using my washi tape from Dollar Tree. I've got my Rust-Oleum white linen chalk paint. I've got some black chalk paint. I thought I was going to use, that was called Castle, but I ended up using Silver Lining. This was $2.50 from Dollar General. And then I'm using the Be Brave calendar from the Dollar Tree. And I am still finding this one around, so hopefully you guys can still find it too. So I'm starting out with my washi tape, and I am going to mark off my charger, and this is a metal galvanized charger, so I was really happy to find it when I found it at Dollar General. But I'm going to be marking off 1-inch sections, and I'm using my cutting mat and the measurements on my cutting mat to just make sure that I'm getting this lined up really nice and even. So once I get that all sectioned off, I'm coming in with my black chalk paint. And there was a method to my madness. Normally when I'm using darker colors and lighter colors together, I would start with my lightest colors first and then come in with the dark over that. But I did have a reason for coming back in with the white after I did the black. So, and yeah, I did realize that I missed a section there, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot to do that. So let's put the tape back on and paint that one last stripe. So gonna get that last little bit painted on there, and then I am going to come in and get ready for my next set of lines, which are going to be in white. And the reason that I did the black first was I was kind of hoping, the little lazy side of me was hoping that coming in over the black with my white chalk paint might, on those black sections, create a gray color, and it would take care of itself for the buffalo check that I am trying to create here. Unfortunately, didn't work out that way. I did end up needing to come in and use gray, but it all worked out really nice in the end. So I'm coming through with my white Rust-Oleum chalk paint here and doing my stripes in the opposite direction. And then I did try to come back in and align all of my tape again right over top of the black stripes that I had done. And yeah, this was a fail in all honesty. I couldn't see it well enough through the chalk paint, but here I am with my Waverly chalk paint and Silver Lining, and I'm going to come in and do my little squares. So I really just ended up having to go back in afterwards and touch everything up. It wasn't a big deal. It actually ended up turning out really nice, and I love this piece, so hopefully you will too. And this is the first time I have ever tried to actually do a buffalo check, so I'm gonna kind of cut myself a break because I had never tried to actually do this before. So it was the first attempt. You know, we live and learn, attempt and sometimes fail. So you can see my lines are really not lined up there in some places. So just coming back in and touching it up with the Silver Lining, and then I also went back in and touched up with the white and the black where necessary. And I'm just for that one section that I had not taped off, I'm just going in and painting that last little area by hand. And part of me was wishing I had just done it all by hand in the first place. Once I had my black and my white stripes on, I easily could have gone back in and just hand done the gray. So now I am just trying to get a circular shape out of my calendar design. So I had used just a clear round plate or bowl, I think it's like a garden dish or something from the Dollar Tree, because it allowed me to see what I was doing. And then I'm just going to keep trimming it off until I get it to the size that I want. So now I'm coming in with Mod Podge, and I'm going to give it a relatively thin coat because I'm going to try to do my best to keep it from wrinkling or bubbling up. The calendar pages are a little bit thin, so they do tend to wrinkle a little bit when you use the Mod Podge. So I was trying to use a relatively thin coat for putting this down. So now I'm coming in with some baker's twine, and the one I'm using is actually a purple and white, but I found that it really matched those berries in this design really nicely. So I've got 6 strands here that I've cut, and I made them a little bit longer than the inside perimeter of my charger. And I'm just gonna braid these all the way down the length of the strands. And you want to make sure that it's going to be longer than the perimeter, because once you braid them, you're automatically going to end up with a shorter length when you're done with the braiding. So then I am just tucking it in around, and I'm going to come in with a little teeny tiny dab of hot glue just about every inch or so around the edge, and just tucking that in. And I'm kind of pulling the baker's twine taut so that it's going to make it all the way around my plate, my charger. And I'm going to have the seam up at the top because I'm planning on doing a bow up there at the top. So here it is, all secured down. And now I'm also going to come in with this greenery. This is a pick that I have from Hobby Lobby that I picked up a few years ago, and I've just had it in my stash. And I'm cutting them in half. This is so soft and pretty, but it looks like pine needles to me. So I figured it would look really nice with this design. So I decided I wanted 3 little pieces on either side. So a total of 6 little pieces from this stem or this pick. And I'm just cutting them in various sizes, excuse me, so that they're staggered a little bit on either side. Coming in with a good dosing of hot glue to make sure that those are nice and secure. And then I am going to be making a finger bow with some more of my baker's twine. I actually ended up using all of the baker's twine because I wanted it to be a really nice, fluffy, lush bow, if you will, for a twine bow, if a twine bow can be lush. So once I got to the end, I wrapped it around the middle a few times, and then I tucked it under itself just to tie it off. I found the other little end, and those are serving as my teeny tiny little tails. You can see those there. Fluffing it up, securing it with some more hot glue, and then I will just trim off my tails. And there you have it. So I love this piece. So leave me a comment and tell me what you think of this. Hey again, so I'm really excited to be sharing this 20 best in 2020. This is part of a huge playlist that's been put together by Heidi Somble DIY and DIY Beauty on Purpose. So really happy to be part of this, and you're gonna find a link to the entire playlist in the description box of my video. So I hope you'll go ahead and check out some of the other 20 best 2020 videos that a lot of the other crafters have put together for you as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right back into the crafting. DIY number 19. For this, we're going to start out with a broomstick that I got last year. It was cinnamon scented, and we're going to cut off the handle right about there, above where it's all fastened together. I just used my wire cutters for that. And once that is all clipped apart, I am also going to trim the bottom to make it kind of a feather shape, if you will. I saw something like this at Joann's, and I was like, I can make that. So that's what I'm doing. So once I have it to the shape that I want it, I'm going to bring in all of my florals. These I also got at Joann's. I've got one pick of these hydrangeas that are in this really pretty creamy color with some browns in there. And then I had some whiter flowers. I cut all of these picks apart, so I'm just using those 2 picks of flowers for this piece of it. Just cut them all apart, and I'm placing them in there and securing them with hot glue, just tucking them in between all those little twigs and then securing them with the hot glue. Then I went back in, did the same thing with these other little flowers. I don't even know what kind they are. I know that the first ones were a type of hydrangea. I'm not sure what these are, but I just thought that they were really pretty and they complemented it nicely because I wanted to do something with this neutral color palette. What do you guys think about all of the neutral tones for fall? Are you more of a traditional, you know, oranges and burgundies and gold tones for the fall, or do you like the neutral color palette that's been really popular lately? I'm kind of digging it. So then I came back in with these sprays. These I already had from Hobby Lobby, and I just took one set of this floral spray, if you will, and pulled it all apart. Actually, I might have had 2. I think I actually did use 2 of them, but pulled it all apart and used the individual pieces all along the outer edge. This is going to provide a little bit more fullness, some more dimension. It's going to make it a little bit more robust while also keeping it light and airy and just really delicate, as you see there. Now at this point I thought it felt a little bridal to me, so I wanted to come in with some actual of the traditional fall tones, if you will. So I am pulling those apart. I had 2 or 3 of those. These I got from Joann. They were, again, on sale. I think it was like a 70% off sale, so I was really happy with the deals I was getting. I think this might have cost me in all about $12 to $15 to make, and then the swag also was only like $15-ish to make. So really budget friendly, you guys. When those swags, you could see them online selling for $130. Let me tell you, I was really happy to make it for $15. So here we are. I'm coming back in with the little cotton bulbs. These are from Dollar Tree. I only used 1 spray of these Dollar Tree cotton bulbs. And now coming back in with the same ribbon colors that we used before. And I'm doing the same roll it over itself method. And so just looping it until I had about 5 loops on either side, and then gonna cut that off. Using another chenille stem, I'm just pinching it in the middle and going to secure it by twisting that chenille stem around it, and just made sure that I had about the same amount on either side. For this one, I think I had each side at about 5 or 6 inches, just to give you an idea of the size of this bow. So once I had that all fluffed out, I wanted to make tails for the bow. So I cut a length of the ribbon and folded it in half around my bow, and I'm just tying a simple knot. And I'm making sure that my chenille stem is straddling it, because I'm going to be using my chenille stem to attach it to the, what used to be a broom, to attach it there at the top. So you can see me here pushing the chenille stem pieces through the broom and just in between those little twigs. And I'm going to twist that off a couple of times. And then you want to keep that chenille stem, those lengths, because I'm then going to attach them to each other to make a loop. And I'm sorry you can't see this quite as well. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying. I'm just wrapping the chenille stem around itself on either side to make a loop at the back, and that'll be our hanger. Fluffing up the bow again, and then I'm going to dovetail my ribbons. And if you don't know what I mean by dovetailing, you literally just fold your ribbon in half, like lengthwise, and then you cut it at an angle, low on the inside and high on the outside, to just angle it and give that little dovetail, is what they call it. So it just makes your ribbon nice and pretty and look finished. So then I'm going to place my ribbon where I want it. And I eventually did go back in and just tack it down with a little teeny bit of hot glue, so it was where I wanted it, you guys, and so that it would stay in place. And here it is on my front door. Let me know what you think. I am absolutely in love with this piece. My fiance Rich actually says he thinks this is one of the best projects I've done so far, so you'll have to let me know if you agree with him, and if this isn't your favorite, what is your favorite? So I'd love to know what your favorite project is so far. DIY number 18. So this is going to be a super fast and easy DIY. I've created these decals on my Silhouette Cameo, and I'm going to prepare my mugs that I got from the Dollar Tree, and then I'm just going to apply my decals onto each of the mugs. And I am going to make these available in my Etsy shop, so if you don't have a vinyl cutter and you have interest in purchasing one of these decals, I will make them available for purchase on Etsy. Now, I have to say that I am going to make a couple of them available in two versions. So the first version would be weeded, which is what I normally would do for you, is basically having it all ready to go just like you're seeing here. And the other is going to be unweeded, which means that you would be able to weed it yourself, because some of the detail on some of these is so intricate that it just takes a lot of time. So I'm going to be offering two price points on that. But look at this Farm Fresh Christmas tree one. I love that so much. And then the fourth one, have yourself a merry little Christmas. So I just thought it was nice, and this could be a really great gift to make for somebody, and it's inexpensive, but it's handmade, and I found that it's fine in the dishwasher. So if you are new, my name is Corie, and this is Crafted by Corie. I'm really excited that you're here. If you haven't already subscribed, I hope you'll consider doing that, and please give me a big thumbs up, because it really does help support my channel. If you see something you like, please leave me a comment, and I would love actually even any kind of feedback you'd like to share. So let's go ahead and keep on crafting. DIY number 17. So we're going to start out with a scrap piece of foam core that I had. It can be any size you want. And then I cut down some paint sticks with my miter saw at an angle to create the edges of the frame. So this really can be whatever size that you want to make it. I really just measured it to fit the foam core board that I had at home. Okay, so I'm showing you the silver lining chalk paint, and we will be using that, but I realized quickly that I really should put the frame together first, so I just kind of wiped it off the excess so it wasn't too wet for me to work with. And I used my Gorilla wood glue to put the frame together, along with some staples that I went back in and reinforced it with. So you'll see me adding the staples to each of the corners there just to make sure that it was really nice and stable, and then it also helped with an immediate secure. So once that's done, we can go back in and give it a coat of paint, and again using the silver lining chalk paint by Waverly, and I just gave it one good coat of paint. I kind of like seeing the wood grain show through. So then what I did was I took my foam core board and I measured out, actually I didn't even really measure it out, I eyeballed just where I wanted to draw some light lines to create a faux ship lap look. And I'm using some more of the Silver Lining chalk paint, as well as a little baby wipe to help kind of smoosh the paint and smear it and kind of get it to the way that I wanted it. So just using a really dry brush actually, and going in and adding a little bit more paint here and there until I got it to where I wanted it. Paint is great because if you get a little too much, you can wipe it off or go back over it with a different color. And if you just add it in a little bit at a time, you'd be amazed at what you can do. And I was really excited about this because it turned out so well. The camera really doesn't do it justice. If you could see it in person, you'd be amazed at how much it really does look like Faux Ship Lap. Well, it looks like Faux Ship Lap. It is Faux Ship Lap. So then we're going to add our frame on, and I lost this clip, but I did go back and secure it with staples at the back. You'll be able to see that in a little bit, but I used some wood glue and then some staples. But before I did that, I just used my hot air gun, my heat gun, to help dry the paint a little bit. I'm having some challenges today with talking, but the heat gun just helped dry out the paint so we could move right along. So I also realized that I had not had my light on. So when I realized that my camera had stopped filming, I had gone back and then also turned my light on so you could see a little bit better. But in the meantime, I had also created some decals with my silhouette cameo. So I already had applied the little get naked, and I am now applying the rest of the little saying that I was applying to the sign. This just made me giggle. I thought it was fun and funny and kind of lighthearted. So that was why I went with this little saying that I kind of found online. So once I had that part on, I also had created from another design actually, just some little slashes that I decided I wanted to put on the either side of the little get naked, so that it just gave it a little bit more interest. So I applied it to the transfer tape and then applied it to the sign on either side. And you don't have to have a silhouette or a cricket in order to do this. You can hand letter it. You could do a printable with a transfer. You could use the letters that you can pick up from Walmart or Dollar Tree, whatever you want. This is really just something to have fun with, and there are a variety of different ways that you can create this look and have the sign be what you want it to be. So the sky's the limit here. So just adding on that last little embellishment, and then we'll be all set. And there you have it. Get naked. Just kidding. This is a half bath. Don't make it weird. That just makes me laugh. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. So here you can see that I had reinforced it with the staples, and I'm coming back in with the backing to a picture frame from something that I had used for a different project, and I'm just marking off where I want that to sit so that after I add the wood glue and the hot glue, I can place it down and not have to move it around too much, because once you try to set something that has the hot glue on it, it sticks pretty quickly, and it's really hard to maneuver after that. So I just want to make sure that when I was setting it down, I had it right where I wanted it to go. And that'll just provide us with a way to stand the sign up or hang it up on the wall, whatever we decide. And there's the final product. So again, let me know in the comments what you think. This, I think, is my favorite project so far. I just absolutely love how it turned out. DIY number 16. So this is our inspiration picture for this DIY. I love these. I am using Dollar Tree ribbon, a Dollar Tree little wooden block, and my ARTEZA acrylic paints in red and green. So just prepping my block, pulling off the sticker, and now I am just going to coat the entire thing in my green paint and make sure that I've got nice coverage on that. Once that's completely dry, I'm going to come back in with my red paint and I'm going to draw little random polka dots all over it. You can do this however you'd like. I've got this little polka dot going kind of over around the corner, around the bend. So place your polka dots however you want them, wherever you want them, as many or as few as you'd like, whatever is pleasing to your eye. And you can see I'm also doing them in random sizes as well. So once I had it the way I wanted it, I'm taking my Dollar Tree ribbon and I'm trying to figure out how I want to do my bow. So just going back and forth with looping, and then I decided I was going to start with the base first with my little tails. So I cut off 2 equal lengths that were about the length that I wanted them, and I'm just applying them to the top with some hot glue. I'm just making sure my ends look nice and neat and pretty. And went ahead and did the same with the other, and now I am going to start creating my bow. But I was trying to figure out how I was going to make it the right length, so I actually opted to build it right on the box. So you will see that in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and put down some hot glue, set down my ribbon, and then loop it back and forth over itself. So this actually worked out really well. And as I was doing it, I was a little bit worried that by doing it this way, I was going to build up the middle too much with the hot glue and that it might be a problem, but it actually worked out really well, and it wasn't a problem at all. My concern was completely unfounded. So I went ahead and did it the one way, and now I'm going to come back in and do it the other way. And sorry if you can hear Sammy's collar rattling in the background because he's here and keeping me company as usual. So back and forth, you can see with the ribbon and just using the hot glue as I need it to make sure that everything is secured down. And once I got to the end here, I didn't clip the ribbon just yet because I'm going to do one more little, well, I did clip it, but longer. So flipping that over so that I've got one little fun little bump in the middle of my bow to finish that off. And I will show this to you a little bit more close up right here. So look how cute. I love this. I don't know, this might be one of my favorites, but I'm not sure yet. So I'm using this extra heavy thread from Joann's. You could use fishing line, you could use an extra heavy thread, just something, you know what, if you don't want to make this an ornament, it is super cute, again, for a tiered tray, whatever else. This is an ornament video, so I'm making everything into ornaments, but you definitely want something that is going to be sturdy because the box is relatively heavy when comparing to other ornaments. So I had tied that little loop around my bow loopy, if you will, and now I'm securing it in there with some hot glue. Lots and lots of hot glue so it stays secure. And there you go. DIY number 15. So we're going to be using a bunch of paint sticks for this. You can get them 10 to a pack at Lowe's or Home Depot. And we're going to be using 16 that we're going to cut down to 11 inches. They're 12 inches long, so just going to be cutting off about an inch. And I'm going to be using my handy little miter saw to do this. So as I mentioned, we'll be using 16 of those, and then we'll also be taking another 5 and cutting them in half. But here you can see the first 3 that I've cut down with the miter saw, and we'll go ahead and cut down the rest. So now I've got my 16 and then the 5 that I cut in half. Now 2 of the 16 I also cut a 3-inch section out of the middle, so you can see I've got those there as well. So now I'm going to be putting them all together in sections. Also just mentioned or showed you that we're going to be using some tumbling tower blocks. At first I pulled out 12 of those, but then realized I really only need 8. So I'm just lining up the long paint sticks for right now. I've got 2 sets of 5, and then I'm going to need a set of 6. And those longer ones that we cut that section out of, we're going to be placing in the middle. So I'm just using an extra paint stick or 2 to get everything lined up so that we can start securing these. So the tumbling tower blocks I'm using to add extra support to the corners of our box. It'll just help when we start putting the box together to lend some extra gluing surface, if you will, to the corners and help make it really super secure. So now I'm using my wood glue along with a little bit of hot glue to secure popsicle sticks to what will be the inside of the paint sticks so that we can start building the walls of our box. And then the tumbling tower blocks, again, going to secure the sides, and I'm using a paint stick to help push that up along the edge so that I'm sure that I've got that right up against the edge of what will be the wall, so that when we put the box together, the walls will meet squarely at each of the corners. So make sure that you comment and let me know if you like these shorter videos with just a single project, or if you prefer to see a compilation of projects. I've been trying a couple of different things as I get my channel started here, so really value your feedback and what you'd like to see. And while you're at it, if you haven't already subscribed, please do subscribe and give me a big thumbs up if you like the video, and please let me know your thoughts. So as you can see, I'm starting to put the box together, again using the wood glue as well as a little bit of hot glue, and that's obviously for the instant hold, but then also for the long-term hold, and putting all the components of the box together. You just want to make sure that with this project you're lining up all of those little gaps along the same edge so that we can do our treatment that you'll see in just a minute. We're actually going to be doing something that I did recently with a vase project, and I will put the link for that video down in the description box in case you'd like to see it. But we'll be taking advantage of the little divots that we have in the paint stirrers to run ribbon through there later. So I'm showing you the silver lining chalk paint, and we're going to be giving that a couple of coats to the entire box. Now I've also created with my silhouette a template, not a template, but a vinyl decal. I didn't have any black vinyl at the time, so I was using white vinyl, and I just painted it black. And actually I say that, but I later then found my black vinyl, so I did have it, but this ended up working out just fine. So before I get to that though, I'm just going back through and adding some white chalk paint to the silver lining just to give it a little bit more interest. So now I am adding my decal. I imagine a lot of people have already seen how this works, so I've kind of rushed through it a little bit here, but if this is something you'd like to see more of and actually see the whole process on the Silhouette Cameo, let me know in the comments below and I'll be more than happy to add a little bit more to the videos in the future. So now we've got our decal on, and my edges weren't completely crisp because I was a little impatient and didn't fully wait for the glue or the paint to dry, but I liked the way it turned out anyway. So now I mentioned the ribbon. We're going to be using an 1.5 inch ribbon. This is just a satin or a silk, I'm not really sure, satin I guess, wired ribbon. And just going to be interweaving it in and out through the little holes that we have naturally from the paint sticks. So we're going to weave it in and out all the way up and down. I started not at the bottom of the front because I am planning on creating a bow on the front side of it. And I originally thought I was going to put that bow at the top, which is why I started more towards the top, but ultimately I ended up thinking that it would be better at the bottom. So you'll see how I fix that. So when I got to the one edge, just hot glued it down to the inside of the box, and then I was trimming off my ribbon. And this is where I started deciding that I really wanted the bow to be down a little bit lower. So I just wove that back through a couple of times, and then I'm going to use another piece of ribbon which I will hot glue to the inside of the box again once I kind of line it up with the length there. So there I am hot gluing it to the inside to secure it. You can see the inside of the box and how that came together, and just making my little bow. I love how this comes out with using the paint sticks and just having that little detail that we can take advantage of. It makes me so happy. What do you think of that? And there we are. So it's our tissue box. I made this to come out to be 5.5 inches tall by 6 inches deep, and it's about 11 inches across. And it will fit your normal large tissue box, and also will accommodate one of the smaller boxes if you so choose. Isn't it cute? I really love the way that this came out. Please let me know in the comments what you think. DIY number 14. So for this, I'm using some scrap wood. I'm also using a couple of rounds that came from a pack from Hobby Lobby. It was a pack of 4 for like $2.99. And this is a $5 spindle that I got from the Home Depot, along with some Adirondack white chalk paint and some elephant chalk paint. So I'm going to start out with my miter saw, and I'm going to cut the spindle not at the midway point. I picked a point that looked like a good place for my liking, and now I'm measuring the longer piece down to be just slightly longer than the original piece, and I wanted them to have a similar look. So now I'm showing you the screws that I'm going to be using. I found center on my wood blocks, and I'm just drilling holes. I'm using one as the template for the other. I didn't show it because it was too hard to get it in frame, but I also drilled holes in the tops and bottoms of the spindles in the center. Now I was just showing you that I had found a larger drill bit that was a little bit bigger than my screw heads because I want to be able to countersink my screws. So see that? I didn't go all the way through, just a little bit, just enough so that when I screw these in, my screw heads will sit below the surface of the wood, and that's going to allow them to sit flat on whatever surface I set these candlesticks on. So I started off my screw in that wood, and then once it was starting to poke out on the other side, I attached it to the spindle and started securing it that way. And then I just tightened it up as much as I could. So then I found center on my circles, and I did the exact same process. I drilled my holes, then I switched out my drill bit and did what I needed to do to enable myself to be able to countersink my screws. So that's what I'm doing there. And here they are put together. So giving them a good coat of the Adirondack white chalk paint. Now I'm just dry brushing a little bit on the white part of the spindles just to blend everything. And then using my elephant with my chip brush, going in and distressing everything, especially on those edges. DIY number 13. So this is from Birch Lane. I found it online and thought it was super cute. We are going to be recreating it with some scrap wood that I had out in the garage from a pallet. You know, I love my pallets. A hammer, nails, a couple of different colors of chalk paint, and I have some navy vinyl there, but I did find some black, so I'll actually be using black. So I've got the chalk paints from Waverly in Crystal and Agave, and then a Rust-Oleum chalk paint and charcoal that we're going to be using for a stain, and we'll show you how that happens in a little bit. But first, we are going to be putting our boards together. I'm going to be nailing these together with some other little pieces of scrap wood. I'm using the 1-inch nails. And you'll notice that my boards are not all the same length, and that's okay, because once I have everything put together, I'm going to be taking it out to the garage and using my circular saw to trim it all up. That's all that's available to me right now, because my table saw is in the shop, and my fiance had borrowed the miter saw back at his place. So I am marking these off at 18 inches between the two lines. I'm going to take it out and trim that. So there they all trimmed up, and it's looking good. So next step, we are going to create the stain that I mentioned, and just adding some water to this charcoal Rust-Oleum chalk paint, getting it to the right consistency, and then I'm going to be coating the board. So after I have a good coat on here, I'm going to go back through with a rag. As you can see the wood grain coming through. I just love that. And my goal here is just to help make the wood look aged and weathered, as it, I can't talk, as if it's been out in the sun and the rain and the salty air. Okay, and you'll want to make sure you get all the edges, and you don't have to do the back of it, but I want to do the back of it just in case anybody happens to flip it over. It looks like it's all cohesive. So there we go. So it's all nice and dry, and we can start working with it. And I'm going to start by taping it off in the different sections. If you remember from the picture from Birch Lane, there were blocks of color on it. So I'm going to tape this off so that I can at least have clean lines within my blocks. That being said, you don't need to go crazy with the paint on this, because we do want some of that wood color, that aged wood, to come through so the sign looks like it's weathered. So starting with the chalk paint in Nantucket Blue, I absolutely love this color. There are 3 sections that we're going to be doing in this shade, but the third section will have to wait for a little bit. Using my heat gun in between just to help dry the paint, because I like to work a little faster than the paint allows me to if I let it dry normally. So you'll see my heat gun here and there as I try to speed up the project a little bit. So now coming in with the Agave Waverly chalk paint. This is also a really pretty color. And you can see how I'm leaving some of the wood tone. I actually wish I had left more of it than I had. That one little section is almost perfect right there. But in other places on the board, I feel like I even used too much paint. So don't be afraid to leave some of the wood grain showing for this type of an effect. Some more of the agave, that's the third block for that color. Now I'm coming in with the crystal. This is also a Waverly chalk paint in crystal, and it looks white on the camera, but it's actually a really pale, crisp blue tone. And I decided to go with that instead of the white because I felt like the white might be a little bit too stark. So I thought that this was going to be a good option. And me with my fat paintbrushes. It's like too big for the container, but it did the job. So here's where I'll go back in after I get this dried up a little bit and do that last block with the Nantucket. And I was so excited to do that last color that I forgot to tape it off, but I realized momentarily, and I'm like, oh yeah, I better tape that off too, so I don't mess up my paint job already. So there we go. And I did actually end up going back in with some white chalk paint because I decided that these colors really were a little bit too dark. So you can see me dry brushing. I took a little bit of paint on my brush, wiped off most of it onto my covered surface there, and then went back through with white chalk paint just to distress it a little bit and brighten it up a little bit. I felt like these colors were a little deep for the black vinyl that I'm going to be using on it later. I decided to try to sand it a little bit with my Dollar Tree sanding block, but it wasn't really giving me the effect that I wanted, so I kind of just left well enough alone at that point. And here we are cutting our vinyl with the Silhouette Cameo. So figured I would show you this at work a little bit because, I don't know, it just makes me happy. I think it's such a neat machine. I have no idea how they programmed it to do that, but I just think it's really cool. And there is our Relax. You'll notice that I did that in two parts because my mat for my Silhouette Cameo is only a 12-inch mat. You can get a 24-inch mat. I have not invested in one yet, so I just pieced it together. And then you'll notice that I do have tails on this. My font did not come with tails like that, but I found an awesome video on YouTube showing you how to actually add tails to any font that you want. And I'll make sure that I put a link to that in the description box below, so you can check that out if you have interest. Now, you don't have to use a vinyl cutter. If you have a Silhouette or a Cricut, that's great, but if you don't, you can use a stencil for this. You could hand letter it, whatever works for you. You could use a printable and transfer it. There are a lot of different options here. But Wendy from White Sparrow Living had mentioned at one point that if you use your heat gun over the vinyl, it helps to kind of help it suction to the wood. So that's what I was doing there. And there you have it. What do you think? Here's the side-by-side comparison. Let me know in the comments box if you like it. Give me a big thumbs up. DIY number 12. So this is my inspiration picture. This came from the Lakeside Collection catalog, and I thought it was super cute. So I'm going to be using paint sticks and some tongue depressor sticks, some Gorilla Wood Glue, my hot glue gun, and then you can see I've got a little truck over there, a little wooden truck that we'll be working on in a little bit. So first I'm taking my paint sticks. This is a pack of 10, and I'm using all 10. Lined them all up end to end, and I'm using my tongue depressor sticks to seal them all together. And I'm using my wood glue plus my hot glue just so that I have that immediate bond and plus the long-term bond. Now I am trimming down some other tongue depressor sticks, and just because I am who I am and my perfectionism was showing, I curved the edge that I cut also so that it looked like it was made that way. Yeah, sorry. I just can't help myself sometimes. But and then I came in with some putty, wood putty or spackle from the Dollar Tree as well, and I'm just doing it along that middle seam. I don't mind the gaps in between each of the paint sticks going lengthwise because I kind of like that shiplap look, if you will, but I just wanted that center seam to be hidden. So then I was prepping my little red truck, and my sister found this for me over at Michael's, and I can't remember if it was 99 cents or $1.99, but I needed a little red truck with the window that you could see through, and I needed it pointed a certain direction, and so this was the way that I needed to go because every other little red truck I could find was pointing the wrong way. So I was so excited that my sister was able to find this. So thank you, Kim. And I'm coming in with my ARTEZA acrylic paint markers, and the red paint that I had used was also ARTEZA, but it was just my regular red acrylic paint. Excuse me, and just using my markers for some of the detail work. And I absolutely love the ARTEZA products, you guys. I know I talk about them a lot. I do have a coupon code for you down in my description box if that's of interest. I do receive a commission if you guys make a purchase, but I would not tell you about them if I really didn't enjoy using them. I've really been liking their products, and they've been really great to work with too. So I do recommend them. But that was some more of the ARTEZA paint that I was using on the tree, and here is another one of those little markers that I'm coming in and doing some more of the detail work with. And just some additional detail with the silver acrylic paint marker. I created little hubcaps, and I did the, gosh, what's that called? The wheel rim, I guess. I'm doing the wheel rims, and I did the running board in a minute. You'll see that all in the silver. So then putting a little door handle on, and again, you guys know me, I have to do both sides because heaven forbid somebody should flip it over and see that the other side is unfinished. So I'm doing both sides, even though one side really is all that will be showing in the end. And now I'm coming in with my white paint marker and doing the little white walls because I want my little white wall tires. So just an extra little touch. So I had set my sign aside to dry with the spackling, and then I came in and sanded that down as you saw. And now I'm using my STARBOND super glue, and I am taking 2 more paint sticks and creating a little ledge upon which my little red truck will be sitting later on. So securing that down. And you guys, oh, and now I'm coming in with plaster chalk paint. I believe this is by Waverly. Now, if you have a long sign from the Dollar Tree or something else, you don't have to build the sign. Feel free to use one of their long signs that they have out right now. I just didn't happen to have one. Had I had one, I would have used it, right? But all I had on hand were the paint sticks, so that's what I used. And now I'm coming in with crystal chalk paint, and it's just a really crisp pale blue. And you can tell I wasn't real careful about where I ended with the plaster, so I'm just kind of cleaning up my edge a little bit with my crystal chalk paint. And now I'm coming in with Fern. This one I believe is by Waverly. This is also chalk paint. I'm just using a flat bristled brush, and I'm just coming in and dabbing it and just making little evergreen trees on the horizon. So just wanted to have something pretty to see for my background. Now you can paint whatever design you want on here. It doesn't have to be a scene like this. The inspiration photo had a picture of Santa with his reindeer. I just felt like that was a little beyond my abilities from a painting perspective, so I opted to do a landscape. But feel free to put whatever you want on here. This is yours, right? So back in with one of my ARTEZA paint markers and just writing Merry Christmas. Now, y'all, this is not my handwriting. This is hand lettering. Keep in mind that this is sped up by about 3 times. So I'm going really slow when I'm doing this. Think of it as drawing letters. I am not writing letters, I am drawing letters. So I'm taking my time and I am drawing them and making them pretty. And then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to widen my downstrokes so it makes a little bit of a faux calligraphy. So if you think about it, any time you would draw down on your letter, that's the part of the letter that you want to make thicker. So that's what I'm doing here. So then once I have it all the way I want it, I am going to bring my little red truck in with a pencil, and I'm just going to start at the beginning and I'm lightly drawing in my numbers, and I'm advancing the little truck just enough so that the last number that I've written is hidden, and then that way I just know how much to space them. Then I came in with my Sharpie and went ahead and traced over the pencil, and I decided it needed a little bit something more at the end of the journey, so I'm adding in another little Christmas tree or evergreen tree, but just giving it a little bit more dimension and making it a little bit bigger than all of the ones out on the horizon. And then I decided I wanted to come back in and make my numbers a little bit thicker, so I came back over them. And look at that! I'm so proud of this, you guys. You'll have to let me know what you think in the comments. So then I took some jute cord, and those little slats in my paint sticks are quite handy, so I went ahead and used those to tie off my jute cord to create a hanger for this. And then I went ahead and I did go back in and trim them. DIY number 11. So we're going to be using craft paper, a calendar from the Dollar Tree, and they have some really great images on their calendars this year, you guys. So if you haven't had a chance to check those out, I recommend it. And then this is also a sign from the Dollar Tree. We'll be mounting our calendar image on this. And then also using some tumbling tower blocks. So taking the hanger off, and I'm going to use my Dollar Tree sanding block and just going to, sand off the edges of this because I noticed that the image that was on there was kind of hanging over and I just wanted clean edges. And then I pulled out the image that I wanted to use from the calendar. I'm going to be using adhesive spray to adhere this. And this actually worked out really well, you guys. So if you watched my video from last week, you saw that I kind of got it everywhere with the bookmarks that I made. But for this, it was perfect. So just make sure that you have that image where you want it before you set it down, because this like stuck really well. So getting all of the air bubbles out, you can use a credit card or whatever. I'm using my burnishing tool from my Silhouette. And here we are. I'm building a little frame with the tumbling tower blocks, but you'll notice in a second I discovered that they're not all consistently the same color from one box to the next. I had a bunch of extras from other projects. I'm like, these are not the same color. So I ended up opening up another box and was just hoping that they would either match or that I would have enough of the brown blocks in the one box, and it actually worked out fine. But you can see I've got a little bit of a gap there, so I took my trusty little miter saw and cut off a couple of pieces, there you are, to just fit in. Just made sure that the edges were nice and just tucked those in to complete the frame so that I was good to go. Now I'm using just a straight edge to get myself started to make sure that everything will be nice and square, and hot gluing those little tower blocks around the perimeter of my picture. So I'm just going to do that all the way around. And there you go. So now I'm going to be using some burlap ribbon, and I've had this for a really long time, you guys, so I'm not sure where I got it. I think I got it online at like ribbon.com or something. But I'm trying to decide how I want my ribbon, and I'm really just folding it back and forth on top of itself to get the bow that I'm looking for. And I just kind of smoosh it down where I want it to be smooshed. You know, that wire in the ribbon is really super helpful. And then I'm going to come in with hot glue and just secure it where I want it. This is a really good time to grab your little finger protectors. I finally did. You can see I'm like burning myself. I'm like, you silly, why are you not using your finger protectors? So there I got them on. And there is the bow the way I wanted it. So you can just kind of see it's just, you know, folded back and forth. It's nothing scientific. So I set that aside for the moment, and I'm flipping my sign over, and I'm taking another length of the ribbon, making a V shape, and I'm going to adhere this to the back of my sign. And I'm not too worried about how that looks because I am going to be covering that with that craft paper that I mentioned earlier. So we'll have a nice finished professional looking back when we're all done. So I'm going to go ahead and take that craft paper, and I'm going to, you know, set it down underneath. Here we go. And I'm going to trace it and then just cut out the square that I need for this particular piece. So I'll cut that all out, and then I will be adhering it with some hot glue. So just going to line it all up and glue it on down. So this just helps to have a nice finished piece. So if anybody happens to see the back, or if you decide it's something you'd like to sell, it's nice and done. So now I'm going to take that bow and I'm hot gluing that to the top of the hanger. And I did end up deciding this was too long, so I adjusted it down a little bit in the end. DIY number 10. This is my inspiration picture. Sammy from Unicorn Dust Design sent this to me and said, please, please, will you make this? So I said, okay. I've got my deco mesh in cranberry and red. then I have some ribbons from the Dollar Tree. I ultimately forgot to use that, but I've got my ribbons from Hobby Lobby and then also from Amazon that I picked up. And then I have some of my berries. I have some of these white flowers that I got from Walmart, as well as some greenery, boxwood from Walmart as well. And then more of the Dollar Tree garland fasteners, if you will. So I'm folding all of my fasteners in half. If you've seen me do deco mesh wreaths before, I normally do this with chenille stems. So I'm doing the exact same thing that I normally do with the chenille stems. And I'm going to be attaching these to my wreath form. You can also get a working wreath and do this with a working wreath. So if you're familiar with a working wreath, essentially it's a wreath form that already has these attached to it. And you can certainly pick up one of those and use one of those. But I thought this was just as easy. So using my little Dollar Tree supplies. And I wanted to anchor them a little bit better, so I just flipped one end underneath the wire frame. So it was just a little bit more secure and not sliding up and down the center fasteners, if you will. So I've got my little rotary cutter. You can certainly use regular scissors, and I just wanted to cut off that end, make sure I had a nice clean edge to start with. And I'm cutting off 10-inch sections of the mesh. And these are 10-inch mesh rolls also. So how do I explain? From top to bottom there, it's 10 inches, right? So the roll is 10 inches wide. Yeah, because it's like 30 feet long or something like that, but or 30 yards, I forget. 30 feet, I think. So anyway, at any rate, I have 10 by 10 inch squares ultimately. So I'm using the fact that these curl up on themselves to my advantage, curling them a little bit tighter. I made an X with them. I'm using one of each color for each of these spaces, and there are 8 section markers, if you will, with 2 at each section marker, so a total of 16. So I needed 16 of the cranberry and 16 of the red. I was a little bit short on the red, so I used a little bit extra cranberry, but nobody's gonna know the difference. If I hadn't told you just now, you probably wouldn't have even noticed. So rolling these up, you can see how I'm rolling them tight. I'm creating an X with them. I'm alternating them because that's just who I am, and I like to make things a little bit more random. But now I am using my cardboard for cutting my ribbon. I finally found this. If you saw me make the pumpkin topiary, you know that I couldn't find this the other day, but I finally found it. I'm just wrapping my ribbon around and around until it gets to a place where I'm not sure that I'll be able to cut it if I don't stop. And then I went ahead and slid my scissors through there. I'm sorry I was out of the screen there, but I just cut off my ribbon, and now I'm going to dovetail the edges. And this is just an easy way to get a bunch of ribbon sections all at once, like cut a little bit more quickly. This cardboard piece that I have, I'm trying to remember, I think that one was a 6-inch board. So ultimately my ribbons are going to be 12 inches long, right? Because it's 6 inches up one side and then 6 inches down the other. I'm cutting it off in the middle. So hopefully you're following what I'm saying. So when I open it up, it's a 12-inch piece of ribbon. Hopefully that makes sense. So dovetailing my ends again. And I needed, because of those 16 places where I was securing all of my mesh, I need 16 of each ribbon. And again, I'm going to alternate them. So one time I've got the buffalo check on top, another time I have the burlap on top. So hopefully that makes sense. And I apologize if you hear my phone going off in the background. I'm not sure what's going on, but apparently I'm really popular at the moment. So I'm going to try and put this on silent. All right, so I'm just going around the wreath and fluffing up my ribbon as I go, and you can see how full the ribbon helps make this wreath, right? So I didn't even have to use all that much mesh. And now I'm coming in with my boxwood, and again, gonna cut my pieces apart, right? Cut my my picks apart, and I'm going to bring these in, and the same way that I did with the evergreen wreath, I'm going to be tucking this in and anchoring the ends of my picks to the wreath form underneath. So I'll be bending those little picks around the wire frame, and then I will go back in, and I don't know why I didn't for this one, you guys. Normally I do go in and I secure everything with the zip ties. For this one I just decided to use hot glue. It seems to be fine, but normally I do go in and I zip tie it as well. So now I'm coming in with my red berries, and I'm just being a little bit random with these, you guys. And to be quite honest, I did have the inspiration picture next to me, so I was referencing that a little bit because I did want to get it a little bit close to what was happening there. So once I have all my red in, then I will come back in with the white. And I had noticed that the white was really more at the outer edges. So pulling this pick apart, this one was weird because it was like they were attached in the middle, and I wasn't sure how long I wanted my stems to be. So it worked out just fine though. So coming in with the white flowers now, and making sure that I have them all secured around where I want them. And then flipping it over, getting everything tucked in, making sure that everything is attached properly. And again, I had really just twisted everything around the wire frame. And then I went in and I hot glued every one of those little puppies. Just making sure everything is nice and secure. So now I am using another piece of foam core board. Now for this one, I did paint it with chalk paint because I have a decal, not a decal, a stencil that I want to use, and it occurred to me that with the foam core board, it might want to stick permanently. And I was worried about being able to peel my stencil off. So I went ahead and I painted it with chalk paint, gave it a couple of coats just to be safe, and I'm hoping that this works. So I'm trying to line it up. I'm using my mat, my cutting mat underneath, just to make sure that I've got it kind of lined up, because I want to make sure that it's even and straight. And I started setting it down, and then it actually did let me lift it to reposition it. So that gave me some comfort in thinking that it probably was going to let me pull the stencil up in the end, because it wasn't just sucking it down onto it and grabbing hold of it the way that it sometimes will in certain projects. So securing down my stencil gently, obviously I need to secure it sufficiently for me to be able to get the transfer tape off, but I didn't want to press it down so hard that I wasn't going to be able to get the stencil off, so I was just walking the line there. So once I have that on there, I did come in with my little sponge, my makeup sponges. You guys know I love to use these for stenciling because I can cut them down to the size that I want, and they go a long way. So, and it's easy cleanup. Let's face it. So I did come in first with the black chalk paint, which is what I had used as my base color, and I'm doing this to avoid any issues with bleeding when I come in with the final colors. So now I'm coming in with my Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint because I'm completely out of my other kind. And then I decided, oh yeah, so I've got my red also, but then I had decided on the inspiration picture, the little I don't know what those little things are at the bottom, but I decided to paint them green instead of red. So I've got my Fern in Waverly chalk paint. The red is my Imperial from Folk Art. And I'm just going in with my little makeup sponges and stenciling those all on. And as I was doing this, I was trying to decide whether or not I should wait until this was all dry to pull up my stencil. And I was afraid to let it just dry because I didn't know if it would I didn't know if I was going to have trouble getting it off. I will tell you that once I started taking it off, I did wish that I had let it dry. I didn't have any trouble getting it off, but because I was working with foam core board, it had saturated the paper a little bit. And so I did end up pulling up some of the surface of my project in some places, not a lot, but enough that I was like, oh, I should have just let it dry completely before trying to take it off, because I think it probably would have worked out better. So now normally I would have wanted to use wood for this. I just didn't have the size and type of wood that I needed to do this. That's why I used the foam core board. So foam core board will absolutely work for this. I just recommend that you do let it dry before you remove your stencil. Hopefully this is making sense and you're following what I'm saying. But you could also, if you don't have a vinyl cutter, you could use any kind of stencil. You could use a transfer, and you know, some of that might actually work better in this instance, especially if you're using the foam core board, because then you don't have to worry about whether you're going to be able to get it up or not. So a transfer might actually be best. So here it is after I touched it all up. I'm going to set it aside, let it dry the rest of the way, and now I'm going to make my bow for the wreath, and going to be doing a layered bow. So I was having some issues on this particular day with my bows, guys, but I'm just trying to get all of my little bow loops the same width, if you will. And then I went ahead and I tied this part off with an extra piece of the buffalo check ribbon, and I was trying to decide how I wanted to do the other part of the bow, the one that's going to be made with the burlap, and how I was going to attach them. So I was kind of figuring this part out as I went, but I just rolled this over itself, so kind of back and forth to get it to the shape that I wanted it, and then I cut that off. Now I'm going to cut another piece of the, see, I'm just trying to figure out how I want to do this. And ultimately, I decided I was going to cut off another piece of the burlap ribbon, and I tied it through the middle there. So I've just got one of my little clamps holding my ribbon for me while I get my tails going. And I made it nice and long so that I would have nice long tails, just like the inspiration picture. I threaded it through the middle, and I'm just going to tie it in a knot once I have the ends the same length. So tying that in a knot, and then I am actually going to untie the knot that I did on the buffalo check ribbon and thread that through this one as well, so that I can have the bows together. So here I am just carefully untying that one and holding onto my ribbon. I'm threading the end of that through, and then I will tie it again with the one bow on top of the other. So hopefully what I'm saying is making sense. I'm just fluffing up my ribbon, and then I'm going to take the part that I knotted and I'm going to tuck that through my wreath and use that to tie the ribbon to the form. So here I am tucking it in through. And then I'm going to tie it off in the back. just adjusting it, fluffing it up, making it pretty. And then just kind of, oh, they're dovetailing my ends again. I'm always dovetailing everything. And then I will curl that up and just form the bow the way that I want it to live. That's the great thing about the wired ribbon, you guys. It's just so nice to work with. You can really just shape it the way that you want it to look. So now, same thing that we did before with our little Tom Turkey with the sign. I'm going to glue down, this time I'm using white chenille stems, to the back of the sign that we made before, now that it's all dry. I'm going to let that cool with the hot glue, and then I'll be able to bend that up. Oh, and ARTEZA sent me these awesome mica powders, and they are cosmetic grade, and they are shimmery and so pretty, and I'm excited to try and use them. So I went ahead and just, pulled some of them out. I figured I'd put a little bit on my little berries. I'm showing you this little super cute spoon that they sent with the powder. I thought this was so neat, and of course I've got to take it out and show you the little spoon, and it's taking me forever and a day to do that. But you can add these powders to paint and make them shimmery. You can add them to bath bombs if you want to make bath bombs. I'm really excited to try and figure out what else I can do with these, because I just think that they're so pretty and shimmery, and yeah. So more to come with this, I can guarantee you. But just adding a little bit to my little berries to give a teeny bit of shimmer. I don't know if you can tell very well on the camera, but it just gave it a little bit of a glisten. It was really pretty. So now I am bending up my chenille stems, and I'm going to fasten the wreath. And I do apologize. It is late. It is 11 o'clock at night, and Rich is keeping me company and being supportive as he always is, and he has fallen asleep on the couch next to me. And so if you hear some little bit of snoring, he's gonna kill me for pointing it out, but I know that if I don't mention it, somebody's gonna be like, is somebody snoring in the background? So yeah, he's a sweetheart, and like I said, very supportive, but the poor guy is exhausted, so forgive me if you're hearing a little bit of background noise there. But here we go with the wreath, and now that we've got the sign secured to it, and she is good to go. Let me know what you think in the comments. DIY number 9. This is something that's super cute at Hobby Lobby, on sale for $18, normally $30. We are going to be making this for less than $1, you guys. So I mixed up some orange chalk paint. This was the pumpkin chalk paint with a little bit of the yellow porch. I think it's called Sunny Porch or something like that. And then a little bit of imperial red because I wanted my paint color to be a little bit darker than the regular pumpkin shade. So giving the wood just a single coat of paint, that was all it took on all sides. And then I'm also going to be using one of these wood planks from the Dollar Tree with some Java chalk paint. And those wood planks came 6 to a pack. And that wood before that I had, by the way, is all scrap wood that I had out in my garage from other projects, so it was free to me. And you can get free wood. I had learned from Holly at Hot Humble Pie, Home Depot often has like a wood pile, but I've also learned, oh, and here's my yellow Sharpie, I'm going to come in and write pumpkin on here. But I've also learned that you can sometimes find free wood on Facebook Marketplace, so you might want to check that out. But I'm just trying to figure out how I want to write my letters here. I'm very visual, so I gotta kind of go through the motions before I feel comfortable starting to write things out. Now, it'd been a while since I'd used this paint marker, so it wasn't coming out the way that it should have. You can see it's really pale right now, so I do end up going back over it once I get the paint marker working properly after a little bit of a mishap, but it all worked out well in the end. You can see I'm trying to get it to work better, and oh yeah, that really happened. So I wiped it away and all was fine. I touched it up with a little bit more of the brown chalk paint, the Java chalk paint, a little bit later, so it all came out well. Of course, I had gotten a phone call, turned off my camera, and then forgot to turn it back on again, so I didn't catch everything when I was actually writing it out, but here you can see me just going back over everything to make it a little bit darker. And this paint pen, the Sharpie paint pen, actually worked really well for what I needed here. And you can see I'm just taking my time, going slow with it, and then just going back over my lines. And if you make any kind of a mistake, you can always come back in with your Java chalk paint or whatever color you're using and just do a little bit of touch up. It really, paint is great because you can just paint right over it. And there you go with the pumpkins sign. So now I'm going to be using this washi tape that I got at Dollar Tree as well. And it's interesting, I've never used this before. It almost feels like a paper tape. And I wasn't sure, because it's not super sticky, so I wasn't sure how well this was going to do as far as being used for painter's tape. But it was thinner than the painter's tape that I had, and I wanted something that was going to allow, you know, a lot more room than what my painter's tape was going to allow. And I've seen other people use this, so I figured I would give it a shot and see what happens. Like I said, paint, if you have a mishap, you can always touch it up or paint over it or do whatever you need to do. So for this one, I am just going to be creating some stripes using the Imperial Red chalk paint by Home Decor. This is a folk art brand, and I just gave it a couple of coats of the chalk paint. So here's the reveal, and guess what, you guys? It worked really well. And I don't know if it's because these particular pieces of wood were really smooth, but it actually created really crisp lines. I don't think I had any bleeding at all. I was really happy with it. So for this one, I'm using the Porch, I think it's called Porch. It's a light yellow chalk paint by Home Decor again with my little foam round brush, and I'm just doing the polka dots on this one. Now this is supposed to be a dupe. I think it's a pretty close dupe. I did realize that I put the stripes on the shortest piece of wood, and it really should have gone on the middle-sized piece of wood. Or did I get that backward? I don't know. Yeah, I think I got that backward. Anyway, I did them opposite of what they should have been. So now I've got my linen white chalk paint, and I'm going to be doing the little rickrack zigzags for this. I'm going to be using some tumbling tower blocks and my Gorilla wood glue. I'm using the ones that are already painted brown for the tumbling tower blocks. I've got 3 of them, using a little bit of wood glue and a little bit of hot glue for that instant hold. Sorry that I was a little bit out of frame there. These were a little taller than my camera was accommodating for. Using some more raffia from the Dollar Tree. And I'm just using 2 strands of each. I ended up folding the lengths in thirds and then again tying a little bow, just like I did with the home sign, just with a thicker set of raffia, if you will. So you can see there, got my little bow tied, and I'm gonna lay these down. I figured easier for me to work on and easier for you all to see. So here I'm doing it again. I'll do that for all 3 pumpkins, and then I'm just gonna come in and attach the bows with some hot glue. So while I'm doing this, I'm going to tell you about one of my exciting announcements. At least it's exciting for me. I wanted to share with you all. I have gotten a lot of comments that have really warmed my heart. People just saying that they really enjoyed the project and they were going to give it a shot themselves, and I have asked everyone to just go ahead and share with me on Instagram, tag me if they so chose, so that I could see what you are all making, because I'm really excited to see your projects. Now, it occurred to me that not all of you are necessarily on Instagram, so if you are not on Instagram, or even if you are, I would love for you, if you'd like to share, to email me your project, and I, with your permission, would love to give you a shout out on my videos. So if you do one of the projects and you'd like to have a shout out, you can email me at craftedbycorie@gmail.com and just state that I have your permission to share your project on one of my videos, and I would love to give you a shout out. So now you saw that I came in with some foliage that was leftover foliage from another project, just hot glued that all in, and now I'm using the wired jute cord from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just twisting it around my finger, or I think I started with a paintbrush and then I went to twisting it around my finger. Again, I'm a little bit out of frame here, but I will show you in a minute what I was doing. I was also using a little bit of hot glue to secure the ends, because it will unravel on you if you don't do that. It just starts fraying and then you've got the wires sticking out, and yeah. So once I have them curled the way that I want them, I am just twisting it around. There you go. See how I'm just looping it around my finger? It's so pliable, you can twist it however you so choose with these. But once I have it the way that I want it, I am just wrapping that around the stem of the pumpkin and just attaching it or securing it with some hot glue at the back of the little stem. And I did paint the back of these, you guys. I know I mentioned before I like everything finished, but I was also keeping in mind that I'll be able to use the back of these for another project. So I'll be able to have a 2-sided project going on. So now that they're all set, I'm gonna attach my little pumpkins sign to the middle pumpkin. And I'm just gonna use a whole bunch of hot glue to do this. Now, the Hobby Lobby version of this had all 3 pumpkins attached to one another. I opted not to do that because I figured it would just give me more flexibility. But there they are. Cute, right? DIY number 8. I have a bunch of styrofoam balls from the Dollar Tree, as well as just a little leftover container from something. I don't even remember what it's from. And I am going to be using one of each of these 3 sizes of styrofoam balls. I also have a skewer here, and I cut off the point, and then I was like, why did I do that? But I made it work. So I'm just attaching all of my little balls together. I'm sure you can tell we are making a snowman, and just using a little bit of hot glue just to give it a little bit more security with the skewer It's probably not even necessary to do this, but I just decided to do that. And then if I had to do it over again, I probably would have flattened out the balls between the largest and the middle one where they met, just to make it look a little bit more natural, because my snowman's got a really skinny waist now, but it was fine. He's still super cute. So now I'm coming in with my ARTEZA black paint marker, and I love these markers. They're fantastic. And I made his little face and his buttons. And now using a chenille stem, I am going to fashion him a hat. So working on the top part of the hat, which I think is called the crown. I think one of my subscribers let me know that it's called the crown of the hat. And just using some hot glue to secure it and adding on another chenille stem because I wanted to make it a little bit taller. And once I got it to where I wanted it, I trimmed that off. And then I used the rest of that to fashion what will be the brim of the hat, and I ended up making it into like a donut shape. So you can see it there, using some more hot glue to glue the top part on. And then I wanted to have a little red trim. I thought maybe a chenille stem, but it was too fat, so I ended up just using a piece of felt. So just trimmed off a little strip of the felt, securing it to my little hat, trimming off the excess, and just gluing the rest of that down with a little bit of hot glue. And then using some hot glue on the inside of it and securing it to his little head. So there he is, so cute. So taking my felt again, and I am cutting like a weird shaped U, and it's thinner up where it'll be his neck part, and then it got wider towards the bottom, and this is going to be his scarf, obviously. Tying that around his neck, and then I'm going to come in with my scissors and I'm just going to cut the ends a little bit to provide fringe for his scarf. Just make his scarf really cute. And now I have some leftover pieces from a wreath I made last week. These are little twig-like picks from the Dollar Tree, and they look like they have snow on them, so I thought they'd be really super cute to use for our snowman. So just sticking them in the styrofoam. I did end up cutting that at a little bit of an angle. I found it was a little, these picks are not super stiff, so I was having a little bit of trouble getting it through the styrofoam, and here I just used my skewer tip for that. And it actually worked out well that I cut off the tip of that skewer because I ended up being able to use it for his nose. So that's what I'm going to do now. And I am going to use my ARTEZA paint marker again. I'm just trying to decide what color I want there. And this is a nice carrot orange color. And so I just went ahead and painted the whole tip of the skewer. And once it was dry, I cut it down to size. And then I just tucked that right into his face. Cute little guy. So for that base, that little cup that I have, I am covering it with Mod Podge and then using my iridescent white glitter that I picked up from Walmart a while back. I just thought it looked like snow. So, and it gave me my little bling that you guys know I love. So using some hot glue, I'm just going to secure him in there, and this is going to help our little snowman to be able to stand up on his own. He's super sweet. Now you could leave him like that, but I decided to give him a little bit of a sign. So I'm using my green cardstock again, and I'm just cutting it down. These were probably about a ½ an inch by 3/4 of an inch. And I'm using my ARTEZA white paint marker. Again, I really love these markers. And I do still have a coupon code for you guys in my description box. It's good through the end of October if you have any interest. And then I am using my little letters on another piece of baker's twine. This time it's green and white. And using a teeny tiny little dab of hot glue to secure these on. And doing this on a piece of parchment paper, and the hot glue did not stick to the parchment paper. I was able to pull it right up, which you'll see right now. So it was perfect. So he's got his little sign, "Let It Snow," and I'm just fastening it to his little hands. And he is good to go. DIY number 7. So here is my inspiration piece. This is the Mackenzie Childs piece. I'm using a do-it-yourself little ornament from the Hobby Lobby that I've had in my stash for a while, as well as some of my ARTEZA acrylic paint markers. Now, I thought I was going to make the top of this gold at first, and I went ahead and painted it and set it aside to dry, but then after a while I was working on the project, I decided I really didn't want it gold, and I ended up painting it black in the end, so you'll see that later. But in the meantime, I am sectioning off our ornament, and I'm kind of trying to think through what I'm doing here, because I know I need to have an even number of spaces for my checkers to work out properly. So I'm sectioning it off. I'm just cutting it in half every single time here, but now trying to figure out where I want my other marks to go in order to get the size checks that I want. So I went ahead and I sectioned it off another 2 times, and again, just think about cutting this ornament in half right down the middle each time. And I would start at the top and find my way down to the bottom so that I just had a little bit more control over where my lines were going. Hopefully that makes sense. I was afraid that if I just kept going around the circle, I was going to end up not making a straight line and end up who knew where. So this was my way of trying to maintain a little bit more control over what I was doing. So once I had that part done, I went ahead and I came in and I cut it in half the other way. So I'm cutting it right down the middle, and then I'll come in and cut each of those 2 large sections in half as well. So the top section and then also the bottom section. So it's almost looking a little bit like a globe to me now. But once I had that all set, I went ahead and started filling it in. I'm sorry, I'm a little off camera here. But I went ahead and started filling in. Of course, I got to do the little top because we can't be leaving anything undone, right? So filling it in now with my paint marker. So I filled in all of the black squares. They're not really square, but all of the black sections first, and then I came back in and I did all of the white. Now, I did this first run with my paint markers. Obviously, you see me using my paint markers, because I thought I was going to have a little bit more control over what I was doing. I was a little weary to try to use a paintbrush on this, but I did decide after I had this all done that it needed a little bit more coverage than what the paint markers were affording me. I mean, the markers, don't get me wrong, they have good coverage, but I felt like I could see all of the pen strokes, the marker strokes. So I just wanted it to be a little bit more solid. So I ended up coming back in with my ARTEZA acrylic outdoor paint and just used a brush and was very, very careful with how I did that. So you can see me coming back in here just because I wanted it to just, I don't know, I didn't want it to look like I had drawn everything on. So hopefully that makes sense. And I would say as long as you are patient and take your time, you can absolutely do this. Obviously, I did this all freehand. I did not tape it off. If you're a little concerned about a steady hand, you certainly could tape it off. It would just take a little bit more time. So if you've got the time to spend on it and you're more concerned about your lines being super straight, then you certainly could tape it off. As you see, I'm coming back in with the black paint as well. So once that was all done and completely dry, I'm coming in with some red ribbon. And I'm just going to make a couple of very simple bows, just like you're tying your shoes. And then I'm sticking my thumbs in the loops and holding that taut and then pulling the tails with the rest of my hands, because I'm trying to get it nice and tight without getting the bow too large. And then once I had that the way I wanted it, I went ahead and created a second one the same exact size, or as close as I could get it. And then I dovetailed my ends so that I would have 2 bows. So there are our 2 bows. Now I'm going to attach those with some hot glue to the top of the ornament. You can see I had painted that little cap, for lack of a better term. What is the name of that thing that sticks on top of the ornament? I don't even know what it's called, but I'm going to call it a cap. But I painted that black, attached the bows, and now I'm coming in with some of my Dollar Tree little tinsel ribbon. It's super pretty. So I tied that off, cut it down, and now I'm tucking that knot down inside so that it's hidden. So it's wedged in between my little bows, and then I'm going to come back in with some more hot glue just to make sure everything is nice and secure and that that knot isn't going to end up sliding out and showing. I love this. Tell me what you think. DIY number 6. So I've got the Farmers Market calendar, super cute, from Dollar Tree, you guys, and we're going to be using those little images on the back. I totally stole this from Sammy at Unicorn Dust Designs. I saw her do this and I had to do it because I thought they were adorable. Using some magnets, some hot glue, some Gorilla Wood glue, the Jenga tumbling blocks that I showed you there. Also going to be using that Mod Podge that's off to the side that I forgot to show you. But cutting out the images that I want to use, and you can do whichever images you want. Doesn't even have to be this calendar. You can use whatever calendar you want. I'm going to come in first and put all of my Jenga blocks together using some wood glue plus a little bit of hot glue for the immediate bond. The wood glue will give you that really nice long-term bond, but the hot glue allows us to continue working with the project and not having to wait until the wood glue is completely dry. So now I'm going to be trimming up these little images and getting them as close in size to my Jenga block bases as I can without cutting away any of the wording on here. I did have a little bit of overhang, but I was fine with that because I was planning to finish off the edges around my little magnets anyway. So once I had those all cut, using a brush to apply my Mod Podge, just giving it a really nice good coat, and then applying my little images. And because this is the back of the calendar, the paperweight was really decent. It was really nice. It was not flimsy at all. So this worked out really well. So once I had all of those on, here, I gotta show you. Aren't they cute? I just love these. I'm so happy that Sammy had this idea because I don't know if I ever would have thought of it. I thought it was just adorable. So now for finishing mine, I'm using jute twine, and I'm going to wrap this around. And I started at first on the bottom, and then you see me pulling it right off, and I had a thought. I thought, you know, I'm just gonna start it at the top, and then I'm gonna be doing something on top to cover up my seam, and that way you will never see my seam on any of these little pieces. So just using a little bit of hot glue all the way around as I go. You don't need to have an entire bead of glue for the length of the cord. You just want enough so that it'll secure it on each side as you go around. I did one row, cut it off, and then I did a second row behind it, if you will. So there are 2 rows of cord on each of these, and I'll show you a closer up picture on it in just a little bit. But the reason why I decided to cut it here is that I just wanted it to all lay nice and flat. I knew I was going to be covering up that seam anyway, and I just felt like if I tried to continue around, I wasn't going to get the nice smooth lines that I was looking to achieve all the way around the piece. So there I am, starting going around a second time, and then once that was all done, for my top part, I thought at first I wanted to do a bow, but I started tying the bow and I'm like, you know what, that is just really bulky and proportionately just way too big for these. So ultimately, after trying a couple of different ideas, I just tied a little knot in my jute cord, and that was it. I trimmed off the ends so that they weren't hanging over too far, and there you go. So it's literally just tied a knot in the jute cord, and then I'm going to glue it right on top of my magnet. See there? What do you think? I love these. I think they are absolutely adorable. So once that was done, I went ahead and applied my magnet with some hot glue, and then I repeated it for the rest. So here I'm showing you a little bit closer the whole process so that you can see exactly what I was doing. Because the image did have a little bit of an overhang around the Jenga block, the raffia does not stick out a whole lot. It's kind of tucked behind the image, if you will. So it does extend a little bit beyond the image, but not completely. It is somewhat tucked in behind that image. So it just looks like a really nice finished piece. I was really pleased with how these came out. And I can definitely tell you I will be making some of these for gifts, you guys. They're super easy, super cute. And you can put any little saying or thought on them. And if you don't have a calendar, you could hand paint these too. You could do so many different things with these. So here they all are once I had them all finished. Aren't they adorable? Give me a big thumbs up. I just love them. DIY number 5. And this is my inspiration piece. This is from the Lakeside Collection catalog that just appeared in the mail. And I am going to be using a baby blanket from the Dollar Tree, as well as some scrap fabric that I have in my stash. Also using some boxwood florals from Walmart because I didn't have the same type of greenery from the other photo. And using some green cardstock, my hot glue, and some tape. So I'm going to start out with 4 pieces of the cardstock. And you could also use poster board for this. I just didn't have any, so I was using what I had. So because I am using what I have, I'm just getting this all taped up and sealed together. I probably could have just used tape. I don't know why I felt the need to use hot glue on securing this, but I did. So now I'm creating a cone shape, and I'm going to get this all secured as well. You really probably could just use Scotch tape, to be perfectly honest, you guys, but I don't know. I was just feeling the hot glue for some reason. So now I'm going to trim off the bottom of the cone and get it to a point where it will stand up flat on my table surface. So I'm just kind of pressing it down there a little bit so I can kind of get a better gauge for it. And once it can stand up flat, I'm going to prep all of my little boxwood picks, and like I do almost every single time, I am cutting them all apart, and now I'm going to be applying them to my cone a couple of inches apart with the hot glue. I'm just gluing it up at the stem. I'm having them, as you can see, they are going to kind of hang over the edge at the bottom by about an inch or 2, maybe like an inch and a half. And I'm going to do this all the way around the perimeter of the cone. And it just takes a little bit of time because obviously using the hot glue you have to wait for the glue to cool. So you just have to be a little bit patient with it. And then I just continue to do that all the way around the cone and layering up. So each time I made my way around the cone, I would go up a layer and just make sure I was overlapping until I got close enough to the top. So now I'm taking my baby blanket and I'm cutting out kind of a triangle shape. So this is going to be a little hat. And I'm not going to sew this. You certainly could, but I am just going to use my hot glue and just sealing down that one side. And once that's cool, going to flip it right side out. I'm going to use the end of a paint brush just to kind of poke out the little end of that little hat and get it all the way out. And then I'm just making a cuff to finish off my raw edge at the base of his hat. I'm going to glue that down just a tad with a little dot of glue, and then I can put it over my cone over the top. And then I decided to just tie a little knot in the end of his hat because I thought it would be cute. So now taking my scrap fabric, and I am going to just cut basically a square. I didn't need anything quite too large, so just cutting off a square that I thought was about the right size. I'm taking some fiber fill. Forgot to tell you about that earlier, but I'm using some fiber fill. You could use cotton balls, you know, anything like that, and stuffing it in here. And then if I'd had a rubber band, I would have used that, but I didn't, so I just grabbed some of my floral wire and I am twisting that around. You could use a twist tie, you could use a chenille stem, whatever you got, just to seal that off. And then I'm cutting off the end, and this is going to be his little nose, so I'm tucking it up under his hat and just gluing it down with plenty of hot glue. So coming back to my baby blanket again, and I'm cutting off a nice length of it here, and I'm going to fold it in quarters because I'm going to be cutting out his mittens, and I need 2 mittens, so I need 4 pieces, and I just wanted his mittens to be the same size. So I've got the 4 layers of fabric here, and I'm just cutting them all out together. Hopefully that makes sense. And you're going to want to make it a little bit fatter, if you will, than what you want the finished product to be, because you do need to allow for that seam. So I was actually wishing that I'd made his thumbs a little bit wider when I cut out the fabric, so just something to note. So using my hot glue, I'm going to set that aside to cool, glue the other one, and then I'm going to flip them right side out again. Then I'm going to stuff these with the fiber fill as well, so it looks like he's got his little mittens full of his hands. And I'm tucking in the ends, and I'm going to seal that off so it'll hold in the fiber fill and just make it one whole little hand. And doing the same thing with the other mitten. So now I'm just parting the greenery using a bunch of hot glue on either side and just attaching his mittens to the cone. And there you go. Isn't he sweet? I just think he is the cutest. DIY number 4.
All right, this also is on Birch Lane. This is my inspiration for the next project. For this, we are going to be using 8 toilet brush wand cleaner scrubber thingies. A wreath form, we're going to be using foam core. I only had black, but you can use white. Using nautical rope, some of the twine, the jute twine cord, Waverly chalk paint and agave again, hot glue, and a shell. So first we're going to take our wreath form and we are going to trace the outline of it on the foam core, and then we are going to cut that out, and we're going to do that twice. So we're going to end up essentially with 2 kind of funny looking donut shapes, really skinny donuts with the foam core. So I started to try and use my scissors for this. I do not recommend it. That was kind of a fail. So you're going to want to use your X-OXO knife or your craft knife. I'm actually using one from the Dollar Tree. So cut out the outer edge and then cut out the middle, and then you've got your thing. And then we've got 2 of them again. We're going to want one for the top and one for the bottom. So I'm going to set those aside for now. And I'm taking my toilet brushes and going to unscrew them. I just really liked the shape of these. I thought at first to maybe use the Dollar Tree plungers, but they were just too big. So I saw these and I was like, oh my gosh, and I love the shape. So that's what I decided to do. And what's neat about the wreath form is it has 8 of those little connectors for the wreath form to hold the 3 loops together or hoops together. So I'm going to leverage those to make sure that I've got all of my toilet brush handles evenly spaced. So I get those all around, and then I'm going to use the Chinese food container as my center. Now I'm going to use my soldering iron tool to actually melt holes into that I will then be able to screw all of these brush handles into. So I'm going to use my little brush at first just to measure out the size of the hole that I need. I'm going to mark that off with a pen, and then I'll come in and I will melt the holes with my soldering iron. This was pretty satisfying, you guys. I don't know, something about the melting plastic. It was melting like butter. It was making me very happy. So then I just went through and checked each time to make sure that I had the hole the right size. I was just using one of the brush handles to make sure that I had it right. So I went ahead and did that all the way around for 8 holes. And there you have it. And it was helpful that the Chinese food container had little markings on it too, so I was able to evenly space that out with the holes. This project, just everything seemed to work together. I was really happy. And you can see me screwing in the brush handles. I'm going to do that all the way around. And you can see I did tuck those brush handles in between the hoops to just provide it with some added support. So, can you see it starting to come together? There we go. So the next thing we are going to do is tie down each of our little toilet scrubber handles to the wreath form. I'm just using jute cord for this. If you have, oh my gosh, what are those? Zip ties. Yeah, so if you have zip ties, they would be perfect for this. I actually looked for my zip ties. I have no idea where I stashed them. I've got organizing my craft room on my list of things to do, but I haven't quite gotten there yet. So the jute cord worked just fine. Just wanted to make sure that it was all secure. So then I went back in and gave it a little bit of hot glue just to reinforce it, make sure nothing slipped around, and reinforced it at the little place where they were all screwed in as well, just so that I made sure that everything was going to stay solid. Added a little bit more hot glue and then started putting on my little donut, if you will. So these are the foam core boards, and then I flipped it over and gave a little bit more glue on this side because I noticed when I was trying to flip it over it wanted to pop off, so made sure that that was all secure. And then came back in and added on the other ones, so everything is kind of sandwiched together. I'm doing a lot of sandwiching with my projects today, it seems. So ran a bead of glue all along the frame of the wreath form. It's hard to see here, but that is the wire that is on top of all of the brush sticks. So I've got that on nice and solid. And then I'm going to be taking it outside to spray paint it. I thought about using the chalk paint, but then I decided I would use spray paint instead. And I apologize, I missed the video footage, or I lost the video footage of me starting with the nautical rope around. So I had started with Dollar Tree nautical rope and ran out, and I was not able to get any more. I went to a whole bunch of Dollar Trees and none of them had it in. So I ended up ordering that giant spool, I think it's like 100 feet, so it'll last me for a little while, of manila rope. I keep wanting to call it Milan rope, but it's manila rope. And it's got a similar look. It's a little bit darker than the nautical rope, but I think it worked out just fine. So I am essentially using this to hide the gap between the two pieces of foam core. So I went around the circle here, and then for the inside, I actually did end up cutting smaller sections of rope to go in between the spokes of our wheel. And then on the flip side, once the spokes were out of the way, I went ahead and was able to just wrap it around and around again. And there you have it. So there it is. So then what I'm going to do is take some, actually I'm showing you that I do have a couple of gaps in there, so I did go back in and reinforce it with some more hot glue and get that all secure so it's nice and even. Then I used my lighter to burn off all the little strings, and now I'm going back in with some white chalk paint just to give it that distressed look, just like the photo. I did end up using a little bit too much white in the middle there that I fixed later on. So there we have it like that. And not only did I fix that white later, but I went in and added some white to the, not Milan, Manila cord. I added in my little seashell in the middle, and there we have it.
DIY number 3.
So this is my inspiration photo from Grab and Rod. These were like $79, you guys. So I'm like, Dollar Tree pumpkin. Yeah, here we go. This is a napkin that I had left over from Bed Bath & Beyond, a pack that I had from a while ago. Used my Adirondack white chalk paint, some folk art chalk paint, and gold. Gonna give our pumpkin a couple of coats of white chalk paint. I'd set the little oh yeah, I sanded this off because it was bothering me. There was a ridge on it. I just wanted it all to be nice and smooth. So then I'm going to paint with the gold paint the little stem. So once those were dry, I'm tearing the little leaves, and this is a 3-ply napkin, you guys. You want just the single ply for this. But notice I am tearing my leaves out. If you tear rather than cut, it is less noticeable around the edges. They blend a lot better when you use your Mod Podge to adhere them. So this time I'm using the glossy Mod Podge because I do want there to be a little bit of a shine to this pumpkin. So I'm going in and I am adding on my little leaves a little bit at a time. So I'm just putting down a little bit of Mod Podge, and then I'll add a leaf or two, and just going back over it with the Mod Podge and making sure that it lays down nice and flat. And I'm just taking my time here. This is just sped up really fast for you. So see there? And then it'll dry completely clear. Now you might have noticed before when I was still doing the tearing of the leaves that I had a paintbrush that I was going around them with. I was using water. So if you take a little paintbrush and basically trace a line where you want to tear your napkin, it just makes it a lot easier to tear, and it gives you a little bit more control as to where those tears happen. So just working my way around my pumpkin and placing my leaves where I think they are needed. And yeah, I just thought this was super cute. So I'm admiring it a little bit and figuring out where to put these leaves. And I ended up going back in and adding some more berries to it here and there. But let me know what you think. I enjoyed this project. And then I just hot glued the stem back onto the pumpkin.
DIY number 2.
this is my inspiration picture from my friend Rebecca. I think these are adorable. I'm coming in with my Rust-Oleum chalk paint in white. I've got a whole bunch of, I've got my ARTEZA in gold, a whole bunch of chalk paint colors from Waverly Pumpkin to my Java by Home Decor, which is folk art brand. So a whole bunch of different colors of chalk paint. So I am going to be making these for my friend Rebecca. She had seen this picture that I showed you just a minute ago and said, hey, can you make me these? And I was more than happy to do that. So I've got a bunch of pumpkins from the Dollar Tree. I'm just starting out by removing all of their little stems. And I'm going to come in first with my pumpkin chalk paint. I'm going to paint actually 4 of these with the pumpkin. And then for 2 of the 4, I'm going to come back in with this other darker orange that I had painted or created for other projects. You've seen me mix that before and use it on other things. And then for the other 2, I'm using Silver Lining chalk paint by Waverly. So giving all of that a nice good coat. And then while those are drying, I'm coming in with some dusters from the Dollar Tree. So I have 2 of these, I'm fluffing it out, and I'm actually gonna spray paint these, you guys. So the first one, I tried to go in first with white and it just wasn't covering up the blue. So I decided to go in with the black, and I just ended up covering the whole thing, and then figured I would spray paint my little stripe with the white again. So this is gonna be my tail for our little raccoon friend. And then I also sprayed a second one with a light caramel color spray paint that I had, and then I went back in with pumpkin chalk paint to touch it up and make it a little bit more orange for my fox. So now I am coming in with my orange, my darker orange. This is going to be my fox, and I am working with my white Rust-Oleum chalk paint to make his little chest right now. You can see I was lining that all up. So every single time I was lining up my 2 pumpkins, because I am obviously painting their heads separate from their bodies. When I'm all done with this, I want to make sure that they line up. So I was very careful to just keep checking between the 2 pumpkins, where the center was, how I wanted it to line up, and all of that. So right now I am painting his little ears. And I have mentioned before, I don't have a lot of experience with paint. Here I'm just darkening up that other orange paint with some more Java chalk paint, making a deeper color. And I'm going to come in and do some of the lowlights on the pumpkin just to give it some dimension with the creases in the pumpkin. But as I was starting to say, I don't have a lot of painting experience. I am not a fine painter. You know, I'm learning as I go with paint. So I don't know if I'm doing this the right way or not, you guys. But essentially I am coming in with my lighter colors first and using those as a base, and then I will come back and layer on my darker colors. I guess my mindset on that, or my thought on that, was that I would be able to better cover up lighter colors with dark versus the other way around. So for the most part, that is what I did. There are some instances where I used the darker paint first, and that was really because if I noticed in the picture that that was the predominant color over top. I don't even know what I'm trying to explain. There were some instances where I did it the other way around. But I was really just trying to go with the pictures. So I did have this inspiration picture next to me, and I was using it as a guide and a reference throughout this project. I did not just do this from memory or off the top of my head, because yeah, I'm not that good. So now I am coming in on my little owl. I've done a lot of the feather work, right, with the other paint colors, and now I'm trying to paint his eyes. Now, the paint color that I used here first is Summer Porch, but I decided that it was a little bit too light, so I did end up coming back in with ARTEZA Electric Yellow. So using the electric yellow, brightening up his eyes, and I thought that that was a much better fit for what I was looking to do on this. So now I am coming in, and I am sorry that a lot of this is out of frame, you guys. I need to try and get better with my camera angles and try to help with making sure that you guys can see what I'm doing here. So please forgive me, but I'm coming in with this darker brownish orange paint, and I am defining his little, I guess, nose line and brow line up to his ears. And now I'm coming, and this is the fox now. So now I'm coming in and painting his eyes. I'm also using the ARTEZA electric yellow for his eyes. So there he is. You can see what I've done so far. I had also done his little mouth. I'm not sure if I mentioned that before. So now I'm coming in back on Mr. Owl, coming in with some black, and I'm going to be defining his eyes. So he's got these fun eyebrows that come up off of his eyes. So just trying to make sure that I'm getting the right dimensions. I'm referring to my picture. And then I'm going to come in and outline his eyes and do his little eyeballs. Hopefully you can see a little bit better here what I'm doing. I promise I will get better with the camera angles. You should see the way that I have everything rigged up at my crafting table. So it's really difficult for me to rearrange things right now because, I mean, let's just say that there's duct tape involved. So I appreciate you bearing with me as I do my best to show you what I'm doing here. And I kept having to remind myself that I needed to hold the piece at an angle that would best help you to see what I was doing. So I appreciate your patience with me. But I'm coming in and continuing to work on his eye so you can see what I've done there so far. And then I'll go in and do the other eye. I ended up flipping him upside down to do his other eye because I just wasn't comfortable with trying to get that eyebrow thing going. So you can see I'm actually outlining his eye first. I'm not real great with liquid eyeliner either, you guys. So I'm thinking the whole time, oh my goodness, this is like putting on liquid eyeliner. But doing my best with it and trying to figure out how I'm going to do that eyebrow on this side. And so like I said, I ultimately flipped him upside down so that I could use my right hand to the best of my ability. And again, I'm so sorry that I'm out of the frame here, but I will show you again in a second how I did that. And you'll notice at the base of my pumpkin, I forgot to tell you about this. So these Dollar Tree pumpkins have ridges on them. So I did go in with some spackling, and I filled in all of those edges and then sanded them down a little bit. So that's why you're seeing what you saw on the bottom of my pumpkin there. And then I just painted back over it again because the ridges were bothering me. So there's his sweet little face so far. And now I'm coming back in and doing his nose. Again, referencing my picture and just gonna fill that in black. Isn't he sweet? Our wise little owl. So back to Mr. Fox. I am now going to do the detail on his little mouth. So if you picture, again, I know that you can't see what I'm doing very well, but if you picture like a cat or a dog and that little smile that they have, that is almost like a little bit of a W. That's what I was doing there. And then I'm going to come in and do his little nose as well. And I'm just using fine pointed paintbrushes here, you guys. I was just using small paintbrushes that were going to give me as much control as possible for this detail work. So I would just say, take your time. Just a reminder, this is sped up about 2.5 times as fast as I was actually going. So, and I've cut a lot of the stuff out, right? Just for the sake of making sure that this video wasn't 3 hours long, right? So take your time, be patient with yourself, give yourself a break, and you can do this. So his sweet little face is starting to come together. I'm just going in with some black to detail his ears. And now I'm going to do his eyes as well. And he's got these nice big black eyes. And I did leave a tiny little dot of yellow in the center just to give him a little bit of light in his eyes. Because if you think about it, when you look at someone or a picture or an animal, you'll always see a little bit of light reflected in their eyes. It helps them to make to look like they're alive. You know, if you have it completely black, it's just going to look very flat. So I'm just going in and defining his eyes as well. Look at the sweet little face. You guys, I have to say, I was really proud of myself because I've not ever done anything like this. Like I said, I'm not a trained painter. You know, this is really just attempt and see what I can do. I am not an artist. My art teachers would vouch for that back in grade school and high school. You know, I love to craft, but I definitely, I don't, if I had to try and sit down and paint someone, it would be like a stick figure. It really wouldn't be good. So anyway, I'm working on our little raccoon guy now, and I'm going to come in and outline what will be his face. I'm referencing my picture again, so I'm just taking my time. Again, this is sped up, so you can see how slow I must be going if I've got this sped up 2.5 to 3 times. So just outlining his little face, and then I'm going to go ahead and fill all of that in. And this is plaster. That's the color that I'm using here. On my owl, I had used cashew for his chest. On my fox, I had used white, and this is plaster, which is like a cream color. So now I'm showing you how he's going to look when he's put together, my little owl. So while my raccoon is drying his little chest and face so that I can continue on, I'm going to go ahead and put my owl and my fox together. So I'm using just little skewers from the Dollar Tree. They came in a pack of a whole bunch. I don't even know how many were in there, 30, 50, a whole bunch. So I'm poking little holes in my pumpkin where I want my 4 little dowels to be, and I'm securing them with glue. Hot glue. So hot gluing that, sticking them in there, and I'm going to let that cool. So I'm preparing my little fox as well. And then once those are all cool, I'll be able to press down the head on top. Now, you don't want to just try and push it right down on top of here, or all of your dowels will collapse inside the base pumpkin. So you want to just very gently use your fingers to help guide the dowels and help press in every single one while supporting the dowel, or not dowel, but the skewers. Hopefully you're understanding what I'm saying. You don't want to just try and push it right on there, or it's not going to go in and it's just going to collapse inside the other pumpkin. But once I had my poles made, I hot glued that as well and put it back on. And here he is so far. So setting him aside, going to do the same thing with my little fox. And there he is put together. So now I'm going to come in with some air drying clay. I picked this up from Walmart, and it does not need to be baked or anything like that. You don't need a kiln. This is air dry. So this is another new thing for me, guys. I don't normally work with clay, so I was excited to try this. I'm just going to cut off a little slab. Honestly, at this point, I have no idea how much I even need, so I figured, well, I'll start with that and see how it goes. And I'm just going back to my Play-Doh days, which are years behind me, to try and figure out what I want to do here and shape this into my little pumpkin stems that I want to make for my little guys. And then I'm just making sure that it's going to fit on their little heads, and I did leave it positioned on the little pumpkin guys overnight to let it dry so that it would have the same shape as the surface on which it was going to be adhered later on. And I did that for all 3 of them. So the next day when they were all dry, I came in with my ARTEZA gold chalk paint, and I'm just painting my little stems gold. I said chalk paint. This is not chalk paint, you guys. My ARTEZA gold acrylic paint. This is actually an outdoor grade acrylic paint, and I've been using it a lot recently, and really have been happy with the ARTEZA acrylics. So now I'm coming in with my Waverly chalk paint in mineral, and I decided, you know, it's just not as dark as I wanted it. So I went and grabbed my elephant chalk paint, also by Waverly, and I'm going to come in and do the dimensions with this. Now this ended up being a little bit too dark, so once I had all of my little crevices done, I don't even know how to explain that other than that, I did come back in with some of the base color and I toned it down. So tried to blend that in and just made it look a little bit more natural rather than these harsh stripes all the way through. I had left them on the owl as more solid stripes. In hindsight, I might have wanted to go back in and lighten those up a little bit too, but I did not. And I still love how he came out, so it's not the end of the world there. But I did come back in with the silver lining also in the places where it was the silver lining as the base paint color, and just softened up all of those lines. Because they're really supposed to be shadows on the pumpkin for some dimension, not necessarily stripes. So hopefully that helps explain what I was doing there. So once that's all done and dry, I've got my little guy's body here, and I'm going to come in and paint his little chest. He's got just his little fur kind of designed, if you will. I don't know. I'm just following the picture, you guys. So coming in and doing little feathery strokes, because I'm also keeping in mind that these guys do have fur. Not literally, but you know, they're supposed to be furry, right? They're little furry creatures. So these are not solid lines, they are very feathery. And coming in and doing a little bit more of the detail work on his little fur and making him look like he's got something going on there. And I did that all around the base pumpkin for this one. So then I came in with a small, teeny tiny little brush to define around his face, and this is the elephant chalk paint again. So I'm just little feathery strokes all the way around his little face. So hopefully you can see better there what I was doing. And then coming in and using feathery strokes to create his ears. So this is one place where I did use the darker paint first, and then I came back in and used the plaster color to highlight his ears where I wanted the plaster color. And then tried to do his ear the same on the other side. I have to say that I did not succeed in making his ears or his little face completely symmetrical, and normally that would bother me on stuff, you guys, but I feel like if I hadn't pointed it out, you probably wouldn't even notice, because he's just so stinking cute that it really doesn't even bother me. Like, I know that it's not symmetrical, like I can see that it's not symmetrical, but like I said, it's almost like it looks like it's supposed to be that way anyway. I don't know how to explain it. When you get to see the whole thing finished, you'll have to let me know if you agree that it really doesn't throw you off. It looks like it's how it should be, even though it's not symmetrical. I don't know. I guess in real life, none of us are actually perfectly symmetrical, so I don't know, maybe it gives a nod to that. I'm not sure. But I'm coming back in again with the elephant and just giving some more detail around his eyes, trying to figure out where all of that should be. And then I'm coming in, before I filled all that in, I came in and did his eyes with the black, because I know that there are places where I need the plaster color to show through for his eyes. So I didn't want to get too far into filling in his face before I had his eyes set where I needed them. So coming in, again, very small brush, I'm just using black and I am going to be making sure that I leave a little plaster color spot on his eyes, and then filling in the rest of it with the black. And I will come back later and just touch it up a little bit with the plaster because I didn't leave quite as much of it as I had wanted. So doing his other eye, and then I'm going to be coming in and filling in the rest of his face. So coming back with the elephant chalk paint and filling in all around his eyes. Now just defining the outline of his eyes with the black again, because again, some of that will be defined with the plaster in there. And then I'm coming back with my plaster color and giving his ears the little plaster shading that he needs. Again, feathery strokes on that. And then I'm going to come in and clean up the eyes, as I mentioned. So he's got those little, I don't know, kind of half moons underneath his eyes with the whites of his eyes that you can see. And then also the little dot of light in his eyes that just help make him look so adorable. So you can see there, he's starting to come together. And then I'm going to come in and do his nose and his little mouth. And this is the black chalk paint again. And I'm using black by Home Decor Folk Art. Little oval nose, and then going to paint his mouth. And again, I'm sorry that I don't have this at a better angle for you guys to see, but it's just a little simple smile of his mouth. Just a straight, not straight line, but a curved, simple line. Look at that. I am so proud of myself, you guys. Give me a thumbs up if you like this and leave me a comment. I was very pleased with myself. I'm not even sure I really want to give them away anymore. I really hope Rebecca's happy with them. I think she's going to be really thrilled because I just think that they are adorable. It's going to be hard to part with them. But you know what, to be honest, I've been doing so much that I'm starting to run out of room in my house. So it's probably good that I'm giving them away because they'll be in a very happy home.
DIY number 1. This is our inspiration photo. It's on sale at Wayfair for $24, $23.99. I'm going to be making it for practically free using a bunch of chalk paint colors and pumpkin and Java, Imperial Red, and the moss again. I've also created, yep, there's the moss. I've also created with my cameo silhouette, or silhouette cameo, some stencils, and I have some more free wood. Now this wood I know I got for free from Home Depot, and I've just cut it down to the sizes that I wanted. I believe these are 7 inches long, and then 8.5, and then 10. So gave them all a good coat of the Java chalk paint. And now I'm starting in with a little bit more than a dry brush, especially in the center with the pumpkin on the one. And then I'll be doing the same thing with the other blocks for the burgundy and the green. And I did not bother with the long edges of these blocks because we are going to be stacking them, but I did do the ends, and I ended up doing both sides again, also with the thought in mind that I could make this a reversible project at some point. So coming in with the moss for the largest piece. And then I was mixing together a little bit of the Java with the Imperial Red to get to the burgundy color that I wanted. And I'm sorry if you guys are getting a little bit of background noise. My pup Sammy is keeping me company here, and he is chewing on a rawhide and making a little bit of noise. And I can also hear his little collar rattling. So apologies if you're picking up any of that background noise. So once everything was dry, I went ahead and applied my stencils. So you can see them all here. And we're going to do a little bit of an experiment. I had learned from Natalie at Design to the Nines that when stenciling, if you use the same colored chalk paint as your base, it'll help with bleed when you use the color that you want to be, using finally. Now, because I mixed a burgundy color, I didn't think to mix enough of it, so I didn't have it left over to do that for my middle block. So I'm going to be using Mod Podge for that one, and we'll see how this experiment works. The chalk paint base versus the Mod Podge, which I'm now putting down. And I showed you what I'm using here. These are little makeup sponges, also from the Dollar Tree. They come in a pack of, I think it's something like 2 dozen. There's a whole bunch of them in there. And I just cut them down to whatever size I want to work with. And then I kind of stipple it. Here I was kind of smooshing it along the edges because these pieces of wood had a little bit more of a texture to them, and I was pretty certain that if I didn't do a really good job of sealing those edges, I was going to have a lot of bleeding going on. So that's why you kind of see me smooshing it towards the edges in some places. But you can see here I'm stippling it as you normally would with a stencil, but then there are some places where I'm kind of just wanting to, like right there, make sure that my edges are locked in. So by doing this way, any bleeding is going to be in this base color, and hopefully it'll seal it. So now we're going to be using the Linen White by Rust-Oleum. This is another chalk paint, and I'm going to come in and go over what I did in the other color with the white. And I went through and gave each of these 2 coats of the white chalk paint just to make sure I had a nice crisp white color going on. And we'll see which one, what do you think is going to win? Do you think we're going to have less bleeding with the colors or less bleeding with the Mod Podge? So here we go, we're about to find out. So pulling it up, and it's looking pretty good with the pumpkin color. I did have a little tiny bit of bleeding here and there, but not too bad. And I was able to go back in with a little bit more of the pumpkin chalk paint and touch up the areas that needed it. And here I am being lazy again because I had a protractor on my craft table, so why bother going over to my silhouette to get my weeding tool when I've got a protractor right there? So actually, to be honest, I figured I did start to go and get my weeding tool, but I figured that this little protractor had a sharper point on it, and it was going to help me get some of those pieces up without gouging it. So here we go, we're peeling up with the Mod Podge. Now, the Mod Podge definitely had bled. I could see bits of Mod Podge all around my letters, which is fine, but I didn't really want to be able to see that. There was an easy fix. I ended up just Mod Podging everything, but what you just saw right there One thing with the Mod Podge with this particular project, it was pulling up my paint with it when I was taking off some of the stencil. So not only was the stencil coming up, but some of my lettering that I had painted came up with it because the Mod Podge was just peeling right up off of the chalk paint that was serving as my base. So again, not a big deal. I was able to go in and touch it up with some white chalk paint, so no harm, no foul, but you can see the base of my T is missing, the A got a little messed up, but I didn't have, and then I had a little tiny bit of white bleeding, but not a whole lot. The green, for whatever reason, worked out the best. So I had really nice crisp edges on the green block and didn't have to do any touch up, if I recall. So that one worked out really well. So just weeding away, making sure that I'm getting all of these little pieces. I did miss one at first in the S, so you're gonna see when I show you in a second that I missed one of the little lines there, but I ended up figuring it out and I got it before I Mod Podged it. So, but that one's nice and crisp. So here I am, I'm just going over it with Mod Podge, and you know, happy accident, right? I didn't intend to do this originally, but because of the way that I did that thanks block, I needed to, because otherwise there was like this shiny stuff around all my letters, even though this is a matte Mod Podge. So just went ahead and sealed them all in, and I actually think it's for the best because they ended up looking really great, nice and finished. Now, if you're looking for more of a rustic look, maybe you don't want that little sheen on it, but I was happy with it. I thought it looked really pretty. So now I'm going to go ahead and stack them. Going to be using the Gorilla wood glue, and that'll give a nice strong bond. So I'm going to use that down the middle, and then I will use some hot glue on either end of the wood glue. I'm being careful not to mix the glues together, but doing that so that I'll have that instant bond so that I can continue to work with the project. So doing that on the one block and then doing it on the final block. And I'm putting the glue on the smaller block each time so that I know exactly how much surface area I need to cover with glue. Hopefully that makes sense. And then just making sure everything is nice and centered. And if you get any of the glue kind of oozing out with the wood glue, which it sometimes does, not a big deal, wipe it away, and it actually will dry clear. So now I'm using a buffalo check ribbon that I had gotten at Hobby Lobby on sale. It was 50% off when I bought it, and I think this particular roll was $7.99 originally, and I want to say it was 30 feet. I think that's what it was. Don't hold me to it. But wrapping it around the whole set of blocks and tying a knot at the top. Now I'm taking a loop of the same ribbon and I'm just going to squish it in the middle, and I'm going to use my little tails that I've already knotted to tie a knot again. But before I pull it tight, I'm going to slide that one end underneath the whole thing so that when I pull it tight, the knot ends up underneath so you can't see the knot. So it makes a really pretty finished top, right? And then I'm going to slip the other tail under as well so that my tails are both on the same side of my bow. Really easy bow, right? And then I'm going to dovetail my ends, folding the ribbon in half and just cutting it on an angle. And I'll do that on the other side as well. There you go, you guys. I am super proud of this project. I really, really love it.
Okay, everybody, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed these projects, I hope that you'll consider watching some of the other mega videos that I have in my playlists. I've got a link for it coming up right after this. So until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thank you so much for watching. Take good care.
Bye.